They're not waiting for you, my friend. They're waiting for a version of you that no longer exists, and you need to really let that sink in, because the biggest lie that's been playing on repeat in your head is the idea that if they miss you, they must miss all of you. But that's not the truth. That's just your hurt trying to make sense of the silence. The version of you they're secretly watching, checking up on, hoping will reach out. It's not the one sitting here right now, calm, stronger, more in control. No! They're waiting for the older version, the softer you, the version they could interrupt, manipulate, breadcrumb, and still be forgiven by at midnight. But that version of you, it died in the fire they lit. You've been telling yourself they're confused, that they need time, that maybe they're scared. But folks, the truth is colder than that. They're not confused. They're calculating, watching from a distance, seeing if you'll fold first, seeing if you'll reach out and play that old role again. But every day you stay quiet, every moment you don't chase, you're reminding them that version of you is gone. And let me tell you something important. The real reason they're still stuck on you isn't love. It's loss of control. It's unfinished business. They lost access to something they never respected when it was freely given. And now that you're unavailable, you became rare. You became powerful. Let me give you a metaphor. You were once like warm sunlight pouring into their life every morning. Predictable, comforting, always there. Then one day, the sun didn't rise for them. You disappeared, and now they're stumbling in the dark, trying to figure out where that light went. That's what haunts them. Not just your love, but your consistency, the energy you brought, the safety they felt. Now they scroll, hoping for signs. But you're not playing the same game anymore. You're not reactive, you're not reachable, and that quiet, it's turning into thunder in their head. See, people don't grieve who you are now. They grieve who they could control. And when you stop being available, you stop being predictable. And that breaks their comfort cycle. Folks, you are not here to babysit someone else's emotional laziness. You are not here to return to a relationship that only worked when you didn't have boundaries. That person might be waiting for your message, yes, but not because they respect you. They're hoping you'll revert. They want the old script back, the version of you that would fold at the sound of their voice. But you've outgrown that character. You've rewritten your role. And maybe it hurts. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, I wish they'd just say they miss me. But listen to me clearly. Your silence is already louder than any apology they could give. You're not here to chase ghosts. You're not here to repeat cycles. You are here to break patterns, to protect your peace, to rebuild yourself so powerfully that even the person who broke you can't recognize you anymore. That is your revenge. That is your peace. That is your evolution. So if you're feeling the silence heavy tonight, breathe through it. You're not going backward. You're becoming unrecognizable to the version of them that once had access to you. And that, my friends, is power. So here's what I want you to do, and don't just scroll past this like it's any other video. Pause, breathe, look me in the eye, and tell yourself the truth. You are not the same person they played with. You are not the same version they thought would stay stuck, waiting for closure that never came. You've evolved, quietly, powerfully, silently, and now it's time to claim that. Type this in the comments right now. Don't think, just type it. I'm not the one they broke. Not anymore. Let them feel that. Let them see it stamped all over your energy. Let the old version of you be buried with the past. And this comment section, that's your graveyard for the weak, unguarded version they thought would never change. I'm serious. Write it. Make it real. Don't just agree in your head. Affirm it publicly, boldly. This is where your power starts to echo. This is where you show yourself and them that the game has changed. And if this cut deep, if you felt seen, if you're ready to keep stepping into the strongest version of yourself, then smash that like button, subscribe, and don't go anywhere. We're just heating up. Stay with me. Number 1. You became their phantom habit, and now they're addicted to the absence. Some habits don't leave the body just because the person who created them walked away. That's what they didn't account for. See, when they broke you, when they ghosted you, cheated, rejected you, or disappeared without explanation, they assumed your energy would disappear too. But that's not how it works. People who once depended on your presence subconsciously wire their nervous system around it. And when it vanishes, their body keeps asking for what their pride told them to throw away. It's not love that keeps them restless at night. It's withdrawal, raw, aching, emotional withdrawal. And the worst part, they don't even understand it. You became a phantom habit in their life, a ritual they didn't even know they were repeating, morning routines that once started with your good morning texts, long drives that used to echo with your voice on the speaker. Those checking-in moments that they once took for granted, now replaced by silence so sharp it cuts through every distraction. They scroll, they swipe. They sit in rooms full of noise, trying to fill the space where your energy used to live. But it doesn't work, because what they miss isn't just your presence, it's the regulation you gave them. Carl Jung once said that people don't see things as they are, they see them as they are. So when they look back at you now, they don't see the real you. They see the stabilizer, the protector, the calming force. And now, without that steady hand, their emotional state feels like walking barefoot through a storm. Jumpy, uneasy, easily agitated. They think they miss you, but what they're really going through is emotional withdrawal. Their body got used to you being their regulator, their balance, their safe zone, and now that you're gone, their system's crashing. Cold turkey. You ever tried quitting coffee overnight? At first you feel strong, independent, but then the headache hits, the irritability creeps in, you snap at small things, your energy dips, and the worst part, you don't realize it's the absence of the caffeine until your body begs for it. That's what's happening to them. They're walking around on edge, losing sleep, losing appetite, feeling distracted at work, not knowing why they're so restless. But we know why, don't we? Because you were the thing their system ran on, and they tried to cut you off like you were disposable. Now their nervous system is screaming for what they pushed away. But here's where it gets deeper. They can't even reach out, not because they don't want to, but because their ego is playing chess with their emotions. Pride is holding their hands in their lap. Their mind is spinning in silence. Should I message them? Do they hate me now? Did I go too far? But their fingers don't move. They're trapped between craving and shame. And you're finally still, finally quiet. And that silence is echoing in their head louder than any closure ever could. Maybe you're wondering, if they're hurting so bad, why don't they say it? Why don't they come back and explain? Because, folks, most people would rather suffer in silence than admit they lost something irreplaceable. They'd rather spiral behind a screen than confess they sabotaged their own peace. They're not used to losing someone who didn't come crawling back. And when you don't, you break their pattern. That's what phantom habit syndrome really is. When someone keeps mentally reaching for you out of instinct, but their own pride stops them from admitting they need what they threw away. Now, here's the beautiful part. You don't need to fix it for them. You don't need to explain or reappear or make it easier. Let them sweat. Let them sit in it. Because what they're feeling now, that twisting in the stomach, that emptiness when they scroll through old photos, that quiet panic in the middle of the night when your name crosses their mind, that's not just regret. That's consequence. You became their comfort, and now your absence is their reality check. They wanted freedom. They got it. But now freedom tastes like loneliness, and every memory of you reminds them of the peace they didn't know they were addicted to. So if you're wondering if they still think about you, the answer is constantly, not because they're noble, not because they've grown, but because their nervous system hasn't caught up to the loss. Their soul is still searching for the stabilizer you once were, and every time you don't reach out, every time you move in silence, that craving gets louder, that addiction flares back up. They miss you, but they miss the version of you that held them together. That version doesn't exist anymore. You're not their habit anymore. You're not their healer. You've retired from that role. And now they're stuck playing replays in a theater where you don't show up anymore. Let them watch. Let them wait. Let them sit in what they created. Say this and write it in the comments. I'm no longer their habit. Type it with your chest. Don't just say it. Declare it. This is where you take your peace back. This is where the healing becomes permanent. You're no longer the drug. You're the detox. Number 2. They broke the pattern. Now they're trapped in a feedback loop. People don't just crave love. They crave rhythm. They crave patterns, even the broken ones, and your connection with them. It had its own twisted rhythm, a push-pull dynamic, the familiar fights, the predictable silences, the way you'd always come back even after they crossed the line. It wasn't healthy, no, but it was known. And human beings cling to the known, even when it hurts. That's the part they don't tell you in fairy tales. Sometimes we don't miss people. We miss the chaos we learned to expect. But then you did something they weren't prepared for. You didn't react. No rage, no long text, no chasing, just quiet, just distance. You broke the rhythm. And now, without that expected emotional conclusion, they're caught in what I call cognitive loop entrapment. It's what happens when the mind doesn't get to finish the pattern it's addicted to. Like hearing a familiar song and someone cuts it off just before the final note. Your brain can't relax. It keeps humming. It keeps reaching for the resolution that never came. They keep replaying the last moment with you in their mind, trying to decode it. Why didn't they say anything back? Were they faking their feelings? Did they already replace me? Did I push too far this time? And every question leads to another. No closure, no answers, just echo chambers in their head. That's not healing, that's mental torture. That's what happens when you remove yourself from a pattern they depended on for emotional control. See, when you were in their life, even in dysfunction, you were still part of their system. You were the button they could press to feel powerful, to feel wanted, to test your loyalty. But now, the button's gone. You unplugged the machine, and they're left staring at a screen that no longer lights up. That silence they're sitting in, it's not peace. It's purgatory. This is why they check your stories but never respond. Why they post vague quotes hoping you'll bite. Why they ask mutual friends about you but never reach out directly. Because they don't want to fix it. They want to understand it. They want to know why this time was different. And that's what's eating them alive. Not the breakup. Not even the loneliness. It's the fact that you took the power of the final word away from them. You took the last emotional reaction and locked it in your silence. My friend, they're not scrolling through memories because they miss love. They're scrolling because they miss control. They want to feel certainty again, but your refusal to dance to the old rhythm, that robbed them of their illusion. Now, they're not just haunted by what happened. They're haunted by what didn't happen. No closure, no last fight, no big dramatic ending. And that's what keeps their minds spinning on a loop. You ever walk into a room to grab something and forget what it was? Your brain can't settle until you figure it out. You retrace your steps. You think back. You fixate. That's what you've become in their life. The forgotten object they can't identify, but can't stop searching for. That's cognitive loop entrapment. They keep pacing in circles in their head, trying to finish a story you refuse to finish for them. And here's the beauty of it. You don't need to fix this. You don't owe them a single word. You don't owe them closure they never earned. Your silence is the boundary. Your lack of reaction is the ending. They're the ones still trapped in the old script. You're already living in the next chapter. So if you've been wondering if they're thinking about you, they are, but not how you imagine. They're not longing for a second chance. They're just desperate for a sense of completion, and the fact that they can't find it. That's what keeps them circling your name in their head, like it's the only question left on the test. Write this in the comments. I broke the pattern. Say it with clarity, with pride. You broke the cycle. You broke the chain. Let them spin. You're already free. Number 3. Your silence turned their memory of you into an unfinished story. They were waiting for the storm, the dramatic ending, the slam of a door, the 20-paragraph text, the late-night call filled with shaking voices and final words. That's how these things usually go, right? A big scene, something to mark the ending so it can be packaged, labeled, and emotionally filed away. That's what they expected from you. That's what their mind prepared for. But what they got instead was silence. No explanation, no final sentence, no familiar meltdown. You didn't give them the movie ending. You gave them a blackout. And that's silence. It didn't just confuse them. It turned you into a living mystery, a question they can't stop asking themselves. People aren't just afraid of pain. They're afraid of ambiguity. Our minds are wired to crave conclusions, answers, closure. Carl Jung said that the soul demands meaning. When meaning isn't given, the mind starts building stories on its own. And that's exactly what happened the day you went quiet. Your silence left a space wide open. And in that space, they started projecting, rewriting, rebuilding. Every day since, they've been editing the memory of you, obsessing over what you were thinking, what you meant, how you changed so suddenly. You became less of a person, more of a myth. That's what we call the emotional cliffhanger phenomenon. When you don't give someone an ending, they never stop flipping the pages looking for one. You became the chapter they can't close, the song that never hit the last note. You ever hear a melody get cut off right before the final chord? Your brain keeps humming it, hoping to land. That's what you've become to them, a haunting melody on loop, never resolved. And the more they try to finish the story in their head, the more obsessed they become with the version of you they can't reach anymore. They didn't realize that silence can echo louder than shouting, because you didn't just walk away. You vanished in a way that made them question everything. Were you pretending the whole time? Did you stop loving them before they noticed? Did they push you too far and never even see the moment you gave up? And because you never gave them the answer, they now live in that loop of doubt, guilt, and fantasy. They try to move on, but their mind won't let them. It's still waiting for the final scene. What's wild is that they might even tell themselves they've let you go. They might post their little quotes, smile in photos, pretend they've moved on. But deep down, that cliffhanger ending is still alive in their subconscious. Every time they're alone, every time they hear your name, every time a place or smell reminds them of you, it reactivates the story. Because it never ended. Not for them. That's how you stay immortal in someone's mind. Not by being loud, but by being incomplete. Your silence robbed them of resolution, and that's the thing they can't forgive. Not you, but themselves. For letting it end that way, for losing someone who left without a final word. You left them to wonder, and now their wonder is turning into obsession. Curiosity is a powerful tormentor, my friend, and you gave them the perfect seed of it, quietly, calmly, without saying a word. Maybe you've felt tempted to go back and explain, to give them one last truth. But let me tell you, don't. You owe them nothing. They had the chance to listen when you were speaking. They had access to your heart, your emotions, your loyalty, and they misused it. Now that it's gone, now that they can't hear your voice or predict your moves, now they want answers. But that's not your burden to carry. Let them sit in the silence they created. And if you ever feel like they've forgotten you, remember this. People forget what you said, but they never forget how confused you made them feel. And you became the unanswered question they'll keep asking for years. You became the open tab in their mental browser that refuses to close. You became the story without an ending, and that, my friend, is more unforgettable than any dramatic goodbye. Say this out loud and write it in the comments. I am their unfinished story. You are not noise. You are silence with weight. You are the pause they still can't move past. Number 4. They thought they could control the timeline, but you broke the clock. They thought they had time. That's the lie they fed themselves while they dragged you along, breadcrumbing you with just enough emotion to keep you around, but never enough to commit. They thought you'd wait. They thought you'd always be there, maybe not in the front row, but always in the wings, ready to return when they finally felt ready. That's the illusion they built their power on, control of the timeline. But they forgot something crucial. Your patience wasn't infinite. You weren't waiting. You were watching. You weren't holding on. You were slowly letting go. And when you finally stopped responding, when you stopped chasing, when you chose silence over softness, that's when the clock broke. This is what I call timeline collapse. They built a future in their mind that relied on your predictability. They thought they could treat you like a bookmark, return to you when the world got boring, when their other options failed, when loneliness crept in. You were their safety net, a backup plan with a pulse, but you burned the net. And now they're falling with no soft landing in sight. Your refusal to follow the script shattered their illusion of control. That's why they're restless. That's why they keep checking your page, not to reconnect, but to calculate. Have they moved on yet? Are they still single? Are they posting for me? They're not watching you with love. They're watching you with panic, because the rhythm they once controlled is now a silent field, and they have no idea when or if you'll show up again. Let me put it in a metaphor. Imagine they were playing chess with you, thinking 5 moves ahead, planning the moment they'd strike. But in the middle of the game, you stood up and walked away. Didn't flip the board, didn't throw a tantrum, you just stopped playing. Now they're left staring at a half-played game, haunted by the quiet. That's what power looks like. Not chaos, not begging, just non-response, just disappearance. See, they were used to being the timekeeper. They thought they controlled the emotional pacing. They'd reach out when they missed you, disappear when they didn't. They assumed they could delay clarity, delay answers, delay growth. But you walking away without a scheduled return? That broke their internal calendar. They no longer know what happens next. And humans fear nothing more than unpredictability. That's why they linger. That's why you still feel them in your energy. They're not over you. They're stuck inside a moment they can't move past. The last thing they ever expected was for you to freeze the clock and leave them there. Now, every hour feels like a question mark. Every day without your reply feels like a deadline they already missed. And here's the part they never admit, even to themselves. They were going to come back. They just thought you'd be waiting when they did. They thought they could delay the apology, delay the effort, delay the accountability, because they believed they owned the clock. But now they're watching a clock that doesn't tick anymore. You became timeless, unreachable, outside of their schedule, beyond their predictions. So if you've been wondering whether they're watching, yes, they are. But not with confidence, with confusion, with dread, because your refusal to follow the script made you unreadable. And unreadable people, they haunt the mind. Say this out loud and write it in the comments. I broke the clock. Let that be your reminder. You're not late. You're not waiting. You're not on their time anymore. You are beyond it. And that's why they're stuck. Number 5. They're rebuilding you in their mind, but they're getting the blueprint wrong. Memory is not a mirror, my friend. It's a canvas, and people paint on it with emotion, not facts. When someone loses you, especially after they caused the damage, they don't remember you as you were. They rebuild you. They redesign your role in their life like an architect redesigning a home after it's already burned to the ground. But here's the kicker. They're not using blueprints based on who you actually were. They're using guilt, nostalgia, and fantasy as their tools. And the version they're creating in their head, it's not you anymore. It's a perfected shadow, a post-damage illusion. That's what we call the idealization rebound. See, when they had you, they took you for granted. That's the truth. They saw your flaws up close. They got used to your kindness, your availability, your effort. And they picked at it. They ignored it. They stretched your heart past its limits, believing you'd never break. But then you did. And now, in the aftermath, they're haunted by the emptiness. And in that emptiness, they begin to rewrite you. They don't remember the arguments they caused. They remember the way you calmed them down. They don't remember their silence. They remember your patience. They don't remember breaking you. They remember how whole you made them feel. That's what regret does. It paints the past in gold, not because it was perfect, but because it can't be touched anymore. You're no longer available to prove them wrong. You're no longer in their life, reminding them of your boundaries. So their mind does what all human minds do in grief. It reshapes the lost thing into something even better than it was. Not out of love, but out of survival. That's the illusion they're now addicted to. They're not obsessed with the real you. They're obsessed with the idea of you. The idea that someone out there once knew their soul, once understood their moods, once believed in them, even when they were reckless. And now that you're gone, they've turned you into a symbol. But symbols aren't people. And the moment they try to recreate what they lost in someone new, they hit a wall. Because the truth is, no matter how many people they meet, none of them will feel like you. Not because you were perfect, but because the version of you they're chasing doesn't exist. It never did. That's what makes this so twisted. They'll tell themselves they miss you. They'll feel that deep ache in their chest. But they don't realize they're mourning an invention. They're addicted to a blueprint they fabricated in the aftermath of their own failure, and they'll keep trying to rebuild it in new people over and over, but it'll never click. Because what they're chasing is not reality, it's redemption. Redemption for the version of you they couldn't value when it mattered. You are not their second chance. You are not their emotional rehab. You were never meant to be the ghost they used to measure everyone else against. But now, that's who you've become in their mind. They lost access to you, and in that loss, they created a perfect echo. And echoes don't leave. They bounce back. That's why they still think of you when they shouldn't. That's why they feel that empty pang when they see someone wearing your perfume, or laughing like you used to. It's not love, it's psychological residue, a trail of regret disguised as longing. So don't let their silence fool you. Don't let their absence convince you they've moved on cleanly. They haven't. They're stuck worshipping a version of you they only began to appreciate when it was already too late. Say this out loud and drop it in the comments. I'm not their fantasy. You are not their memory's masterpiece. You are reality. And you walked away because reality doesn't wait to be appreciated. Number 6. Their ego is telling them you'll return, but their gut knows you're gone. Pride is a clever prison. It looks like strength on the outside, stone-faced silence, dry laughter, carefully filtered posts pretending life hasn't changed. But inside, it's pure chaos. That's where they're living now. You see, their ego built a whole story around you. A story where you'd always come back, where no matter what they did, you'd bend, where your loyalty was permanent, even when their respect wasn't. That fantasy became their safety net. They didn't just believe you'd return, they expected it. But now, days have passed, then weeks, now months, and still nothing. No text. No reaction, just silence, and that silence is starting to whisper something their ego can't stand to hear. You're actually gone. On the surface, they'll keep pretending, acting calm, acting cool, making it look like they've got it all figured out. But deep in their gut, they feel something sharp, that creeping, uncomfortable sensation that this time it's different, that you're not angry, you're indifferent, and that, my friend, is the death sentence their ego never prepared for. You've become emotionally unavailable, not out of spite, but out of growth. And that distance is what we call ego dissonance collapse, when their pride is screaming one version of the story, but their intuition is quietly telling the truth. And the gap between those voices, it's ripping them apart from the inside out. You were supposed to chase. That's how it always went, right? They'd pull back. You'd lean in. They'd go cold. You'd warm things up. But now, they're frozen. And you didn't thaw them out this time. That's why they're restless. Why they suddenly view your silence as an attack. Because every quiet day from you feels like a tiny rejection, a micro-abandonment, not loud enough to admit out loud, but deep enough to make their stomach twist. Their ego wants to keep the mask on, but their nervous system already knows the truth. You've moved on emotionally. You're not in the same place they left you, and that's the part that haunts them. Not just that you're gone, but that they pushed you there. They built this prison themselves, brick by brick, with every ignored message, every rolled eye, every moment they withheld affection to test your love. And now that you've stopped knocking on the door, they're pacing inside the cell they locked from the inside. They want to reach out. They rehearse the message. They check your page for a sign. But then that voice kicks in. Don't be the one to break first. What if they're just testing you back? That pride won't let them be vulnerable, even as it destroys them. What's worse, they can't even talk to anyone about it, because they already told their friends, "I don't care." Already pretended they were the one who left first. Already told everyone it wasn't that deep. So now they suffer in silence. Publicly proud, privately panicked. You became their unfinished loop, and they can't close it without admitting defeat. That's the thing about ego. It fights for control, even when it's bleeding. It would rather go down pretending it's untouched than rise up and admit it was wrong. But here's what they don't know. You don't live in that emotional loop anymore. You've stepped out of the ring. You stopped playing chess with someone who only knew how to win by disappearing. And now that you're no longer reacting, no longer available, no longer predictable, they're starting to realize they weren't the powerful one. You were. Because real power isn't being loud, it's being missed. So if you've been wondering whether they feel your absence, trust me, they do. Not in words, not in tears, but in the cracks forming between their ego and their intuition. And every day those cracks are widening. Say this out loud and write it in the comments. Their pride can't reach me. Let it be a reminder, you're not someone's test, you're someone's lesson, and they're learning it now in silence. Number 7. They're watching your healing like a threat assessment. Healing isn't invisible, not to the one who broke you. To them, your healing is loud. It's threatening. It rattles the cage of their ego every time you glow without explanation, laugh in a new photo, or post like you never skipped a beat. They don't see healing as peace. They see it as danger, because your happiness without them rewrites the narrative they were clinging to. The story where you were the broken one, the emotional one, the one who would always need closure, always need answers, always need them. But now they're watching you from behind a screen, quietly panicking as the version of you they had power over vanishes in real time. This is what I call the reverse threat mirror. Your growth, your peace, your joy. It reflects everything they haven't done. Every smile you wear without their name attached to it is a mirror that shows them just how little they've moved since the day you walked away. And they hate the view, because people who harm others rarely expect those people to rise without them. They expect a trail of wreckage, a forever attachment. But when you start to walk in wholeness, when you start to live, not perform, you become a threat to their illusion. They're not just stalking your healing to keep tabs, they're studying it like a threat assessment, measuring the damage, checking for signs that there's still a crack in your armor, still an open door. But what they keep finding is terrifying. You're not bleeding anymore. And if you're not bleeding, it means you're not calling. You're not aching. You're not chasing. You're not rehearsing what you'd say if they finally apologized. You're living. And for someone who built their self-worth on being needed, that realization cuts deep. They expected your healing to be staged, temporary, just a reaction, something for show, a performance that would crack under pressure. But instead, it's solid, it's quiet, calm, consistent. You're not trying to be seen, you're just being. And that's what makes them spiral, because now they don't know where you are emotionally, and when someone can't predict you, they can't control the narrative anymore. That silence, that glow, it makes you unreadable. And unreadable people, they haunt the insecure. Every time you grow, their old fantasies begin to die. The one where you reach out at 2 a.m., the one where you break down and say you miss them, the one where you show up needing answers, those imagined moments. They're starting to fade. And that's when the real fear sets in, because now they're faced with a terrifying question. What if I'm the one who has to reach out first? And worse, what if I'm too late? They want to reach out, trust me, but your growth raises the stakes, because if they speak now and you don't respond the way they expect, their ego takes the hit. Their silence has been their shield, and now that shield feels flimsy against the strength you're walking in. That's the weight of watching someone heal without you. It's not jealousy, it's exposure. You've become the evidence of their failure, and that truth is harder to face than any breakup. So let them watch, let them assess. Let them try to measure the version of you they no longer recognize. They can't study their way back into your life, because healing doesn't speak the same language as manipulation. And you've already changed dialects. Say this out loud and write it in the comments. My growth is their mirror. You don't have to prove anything, just keep healing, because every time you rise, they have to confront the version of themselves that couldn't stop you. Number 8. They broke you first, but now you're the one who gets the last word without saying anything. Closure doesn't always arrive in a neat little box with answers tied up in a bow. Sometimes closure walks away quietly, says nothing, and never returns. And that silence, it speaks louder than every argument, every apology, every excuse. That's the kind of silence you gave them. And my friend, they feel it. Every single day, they broke you first. That part isn't up for debate. They were reckless with your love, casual with your loyalty, clumsy with your heart, and when things fell apart, they thought they'd have the final word. Maybe they expected a meltdown. Maybe they expected a dramatic goodbye. Maybe they were ready for a back and forth, a final tug of war. But what they weren't ready for was your calm exit, your stillness, the kind of quiet that can't be argued with. You didn't need to say goodbye. You became the goodbye. That's how you got the last word, without saying a thing. And now, they flinch when your name comes up. They double-check your page when no one's looking. They still ask around, quietly, indirectly, hoping for a whisper of you, because what you left behind wasn't closure. It was an echo. A lesson, an unmarked chapter in their story. They broke something in you, yes, but what they didn't expect was that your healing would break something in them. That's what happens when someone thinks they ended the story, but the plot twist is this. The one they discarded ended up writing the final scene. This is what silence with weight looks like. It's not passive, it's not weakness, it's presence without availability. You're not gone, you're just inaccessible, and that inaccessibility drives them mad, because they can't reach you to explain, to fix, to control, to feel seen. They can't undo the damage with a text. They can't reset the game. You're past the point of needing validation. That's why they keep circling, still watching, still waiting. Not because they love you more now, but because they don't understand how you stopped needing them to love you at all. You became their unfinished lesson, and the thing about people who don't learn the first time, they repeat it over and over, and every person they try to date, every conversation that feels off, every emotional high that doesn't last, it all traces back to the one they couldn't close the book on. You. Not because you were perfect, but because you left with your dignity intact. And that's rare. That's haunting. They thought closure would come when you apologized, when you cracked, when you asked for understanding. But now they're realizing closure didn't come through words. It came through absence. And now they're the one rereading the past, line by line, looking for signs they missed. That's not peace. That's purgatory. And they put themselves there. So no, You didn't get the last word in a dramatic sense. You didn't scream or expose or beg for justice. But that's what makes it so powerful, because the last word isn't always spoken. Sometimes it's walked away from. Sometimes it's lived. And that's what you're doing now. You're living. You're moving. You're healing. And while they're stuck trying to rewrite the past, you're building a future where their name doesn't echo anymore. Say this out loud and write it in the comments. I got the last word. Let that be your truth, your reminder. You didn't just survive what they did, you transcended it. And some people, they'll spend the rest of their life trying to understand how you did that without ever saying a word.